The day everything broke when Amelia Carter married Daniel Brooks, she believed she was stepping into the kind of life people dreamed about but rarely found. Daniel was charming in a quiet, confident way. He was the kind of man who did not need to speak loudly to be noticed. He came from a respected family in Charleston, South Carolina, and carried himself with the easy assurance of someone raised to believe the world would always make room for him. Amelia, on the other hand, had built herself from the ground up. She had not grown up with old money, family influence, or social status. Her father had worked long shifts as a mechanic, and her mother had spent most of her life caring for other people's children while trying to keep their own home together. Amelia knew what struggle looked like. She knew what sacrifice sounded like at midnight when bills were being whispered over in the kitchen. Maybe that was why she loved Daniel so fiercely. He felt like peace. In the first year of their marriage, everything seemed almost too good to be true. They bought a beautiful two-story house with white shutters and rose bushes lining the front porch. They hosted dinners on weekends, attended charity galas with Daniel's parents, and laughed over takeout containers on the kitchen floor when life felt too busy for anything else. At night, Daniel would wrap his arms around her and speak about the future as if it were already waiting for them. Two kids, he once said, tracing lazy circles on the back of her hand. A boy first, then a girl, and a golden retriever that sheds all over the couch. Amelia laughed and kissed his cheek. "You've thought this through." "I've thought through all of it," he told her. With you, back then she believed him. Back then she did not know how quickly love could turn into blame. By the second year of their marriage, the questions began. At first, they were harmless. At least that was how they were packaged. Daniel's mother, Evelyn Brooks, had perfected the art of cruelty wrapped in elegance. She would smile over Sunday brunch and ask, "So, when are you two finally giving us some good news?" Sometimes she would place a manicured hand over Amelia's wrist and say things like, "You're not getting any younger, dear." The words came dipped in sugar, but they always landed like glass. Amelia tried not to let them get to her. She and Daniel were trying. They were doing everything they were supposed to do, tracking dates, taking vitamins, visiting doctors. Holding on to hope every month only to watch it collapse in silence. Each negative test took something from her. At first it was excitement, then confidence, then peace. She stopped buying baby clothes she passed in stores, stopped lingering near nursery displays, stopped letting herself imagine little footsteps across hardwood floors. Still, she tried to stay hopeful. Daniel came with her to the first appointments. He held her hand in the waiting room and kissed her forehead when she looked nervous. He told her they were a team. "We'll get through this," he said, but over time something changed. It was not sudden, that was the cruel part. It happened slowly enough that Amelia could not point to a single day and say there. That was when my marriage began to die. Daniel started working later. He stopped asking how she was feeling after appointments. He became quieter at dinner, more distracted, more impatient. Then came the distance in bed, physical at first, then emotional, the kind of distance that made two people feel like strangers even when they were lying inches apart. One evening, after yet another disappointing doctor visit, Amelia stood in their kitchen staring at the sink full of dishes she did not remember dirtying. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. Daniel had come home an hour earlier, loosened his tie, and gone straight to his office without asking how the appointment went. She stood there for several minutes before finally walking down the hallway and knocking on the open door. He did not look up from his laptop. "Yeah," Amelia hesitated. "The doctor said we should both do more tests." That got his attention. He leaned back in his chair and frowned. "More tests? Yes. For what?" She swallowed. "For fertility." Daniel's face changed almost instantly. Not dramatically, just enough. Enough for her to notice the tension in his jaw, enough for her to feel the room shift. He closed the laptop with deliberate calm. "I thought they already knew the issue." Amelia stared at him. "They don't know the issue." "Amelia." His tone carried warning and she hated that she recognized it. "The doctor said infertility can come from either side," she continued carefully, "or both. They want a fuller picture." Daniel stood up. "So now you're telling me I'm the problem?" "No," she said quickly. "That's not what I'm saying." "It sounds like exactly what you're saying." Her chest tightened. "I'm saying we should both get tested. That's normal." Daniel let out a humorless laugh. "Normal. You know what's normal? A married couple having children after 2 years of trying." The words hit her like a slap. She looked at him, stunned. "You think I don't know that?" He rubbed a hand over his face, already irritated, already pulling away. "I'm tired, Amelia. I'm tired too." Then stopped turning every conversation into a medical investigation. She felt anger rise, hot and sharp. "I'm not turning it into anything. I'm trying to save us." Daniel looked at her then, finally looked at her, and there was something in his eyes she had never seen before. Resentment. "Save us?" he repeated. From what? Her throat tightened. From this. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel picked up his laptop again and said, without emotion, I'm not taking the test. Amelia felt the floor disappear beneath her. Why not? Because I already know there's nothing wrong with me. And how exactly do you know that? He met her gaze. Because before you, I never had a reason to think otherwise. The room went cold. Amelia stood frozen, every muscle locked in place. He had said it so casually, so cleanly. As if he had not just placed the entire weight of their pain onto her shoulders. Before me, she repeated quietly. Daniel exhaled like he was the one being burdened. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. He did not answer. That silence said enough. She nodded slowly, even though tears were already burning behind her eyes. Okay, Amelia walked out before he could say anything else. That night, she cried in the guest bathroom with a towel pressed against her mouth so no one would hear. It was the first time she allowed herself to admit the truth. She was not just fighting infertility, she was fighting alone. Over the next few months, Daniel's mother became bolder. At a family dinner one Sunday, Evelyn set down her wine glass and looked at Amelia with false sympathy. I spoke to a specialist friend of mine, she said. There are clinics for women with reproductive issues that are quite advanced now. The table fell quiet. Amelia looked down at her plate, forcing herself not to react. Daniel's father cleared his throat but said nothing. Daniel kept cutting his steak. Evelyn continued, it's really such a shame when a woman cannot give her husband a family. It puts so much strain on a marriage. Amelia's hand trembled around her fork. She looked at Daniel, waiting for him to defend her. He did not one word, not one glance, not one act of love. That hurt more than Evelyn ever could. Later that night when they got into the car, Amelia turned to him with tears of humiliation still hot in her eyes. You just sat there, Daniel stared ahead as he started the engine. I didn't want to make a scene. A scene, she said in disbelief. Your mother humiliated me in front of everyone. She was out of line. Then why didn't you say that? His jaw tightened. Because I'm exhausted, Amelia, she laughed bitterly. You're exhausted? Do you have any idea what this feels like for me? Daniel slammed his hand against the steering wheel. And do you have any idea what this feels like for me? The sudden force of his voice filled the car. Amelia went still. Daniel breathed heavily, then shook his head. Forget it? No, she said, her own voice breaking. Say it. He looked at her, and for a second she saw the man she married buried beneath frustration, pride, and disappointment. But he disappeared just as quickly. I wanted a family, Daniel said. I wanted a son, a daughter, a future that made sense. Amelia whispered, so did I. His expression hardened. Then why do I feel like I'm the only one losing that? She stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. I'm the one going through tests, she said. I'm the one taking hormones, changing my diet, tracking every cycle, praying every month and breaking every month. But somehow you're the victim. Daniel looked away. That was his answer. By the time winter came, the marriage looked intact from the outside. They still attended events together, still smiled in public, still signed holiday cards with both their names. But inside the house, the silence had become permanent. One night, Amelia found herself standing in the doorway of what was meant to be the nursery. The room was empty except for stacked storage boxes and a folded crib catalog she had once hidden in a drawer. She stared at the pale yellow walls they had painted together 2 years earlier. Daniel had insisted yellow was a safe color. Something warm, he had said, something happy. Now the room felt like a graveyard for promises. She did not hear Daniel behind her until he spoke. You should stop coming in here, Amelia turned. Why? He leaned against the doorway, expression unreadable. Because it's not helping. She let out a small, broken laugh. Nothing is helping. Daniel's eyes drifted around the room, then back to her. Maybe it's time we accepted reality. Amelia felt dread crawl up her spine. What does that mean? He did not answer immediately. He took a breath, as if preparing to say something he had rehearsed in his mind 100 times. It means maybe we want different things. Her heart began pounding. No, she said softly, don't do this. He looked almost annoyed by her response. Do what? Say something cruel and pretend it's logical. Daniel folded his arms. I'm being honest. No, she said, voice trembling, you're being cowardly. That hit him good, she thought. Let it. For a moment he just stared at her, then his face closed off entirely. I can't keep living like this. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. Living like what? Married to me? He said nothing. The silence cut deeper than any insult. When he finally spoke, his tone was flat. I think we need some space. She felt her world tilt. Space? Yes. Amelia shook her head slowly, like refusing the word itself could stop what was happening. You're leaving me because we don't have children? Daniel looked away. It's more complicated than that. But it was, not really. A week later, he moved into an apartment downtown. 3 weeks after that, his lawyer sent divorce papers. Amelia sat alone at the dining table when they arrived. the envelope resting in front of her like a final insult. She opened it with trembling hands, every page blurring through tears she was too proud to wipe away. The language was cold, clinical, irreversible, irreconcilable differences. She almost laughed. What elegant words for betrayal. Daniel did not even have the courage to bring them himself. When he finally came by the house to discuss the logistics, Amelia was waiting in the living room. She wore no makeup. Her face was pale, exhausted, stripped of every effort she had once made to seem okay. Daniel stood near the fireplace, hands in his coat pockets as though he were visiting a stranger. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Amelia asked the only question that still mattered. "Did you ever love me?" Daniel's face shifted. "Not enough," he answered too slowly. "Yes." The word barely made it across the room. Amelia nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Then why does this feel so easy for you?" "It's not easy," she laughed through the pain. "No, because from where I'm standing it looks pretty simple. Your mother blames me, you blame me. Then you walk away and start over. That's not fair." "No," Amelia snapped, rising to her feet. "You know what's not fair. Being treated like a failure because my body didn't give your family what they wanted on their schedule." Daniel's expression hardened. "That's not all this is." "Then say what it is." He hesitated. Then he said the thing she would remember for the rest of her life. "I need a life that can move forward." Amelia stared at him. Every part of her went still. There it was, the truth, plain and ugly. Children were not just a dream to him, they were a condition, a requirement, a measure of her worth. And because she had not met that measure, he had decided she was replaceable. Amelia wiped her face and stepped back. "Then go." Daniel looked almost startled. "Go," she repeated, stronger this time. "Go find your perfect future." He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but whatever remained between them had already died. He left 5 minutes later. Amelia listened to the front door close and stood motionless in the center of the room until the sound of his car faded into the distance. That was the moment it became real, not when he moved out. Not when the papers arrived, but when the silence settled over the house and she understood with terrible clarity that no one was coming back for her. The days after the divorce blurred together. Friends called, her mother came by with soup and soft eyes. People said things like, "You're still young and everything happens for a reason and he didn't deserve you anyway." But grief does not care about clean phrases. Grief is messy. It sits on your chest in the morning and follows you into the shower. It waits in quiet rooms. It hides in songs, grocery store aisles, empty closets, and untouched coffee mugs. Amelia sold the house 6 months later. She could not stand the memories trapped in the walls. She moved to Atlanta, where nobody knew her story, her marriage, or the shame Daniel's family had wrapped around her name. She took a job at a private medical foundation, rented a modest apartment, and tried to become someone new, someone steadier, someone less breakable. She worked long hours, kept her head down, smiled when required, avoided anything that reminded her of who she used to be, and slowly, painfully, she rebuilt. But some wounds do not disappear, they just go quiet. 2 years after the divorce, Amelia was sitting in a doctor's office again, only this time she was there alone by choice. Doctor Elise Warren was one of the most respected reproductive endocrinologists in Georgia. She was direct, intelligent, and refreshingly uninterested in false comfort. She reviewed Amelia's file carefully, then looked up. "There's something important you need to understand," Dr. Warren said. Amelia straightened in her chair. "Based on your previous records, the conclusion that you were infertile was never medically confirmed." Amelia blinked. "What?" Dr. Warren slid a folder toward her. "You were treated as if you were the primary issue, but your testing was incomplete, and your former husband never completed a full male fertility workup." Amelia felt the air leave her lungs. "I asked him to," she whispered. Dr. Warren nodded. "I see that in the notes it didn't happen." Amelia stared at the folder in front of her. For a moment she could not hear anything at all. Not the air conditioner, not the traffic outside, not even her own breathing. Only one thought, over and over again. It was never proven. Her hands began to shake. "All this time," she said faintly. Dr. Warren's expression softened. "I'm very sorry." Amelia looked up, eyes glassy with disbelief and rage and grief, too old to still be this alive. "All this time," she repeated, "they made me believe it was me." Dr. Warren did not interrupt, and maybe that was mercy because Amelia broke then, not loudly, not dramatically. Just quietly, completely. A lifetime of blame cracked open inside her, and beneath it was a truth more devastating than any diagnosis. She had lost her marriage for a lie no one had ever bothered to prove. Amelia cried in her car for nearly an hour after that appointment, but when the tears stopped, something else remained. Not sorrow, not exactly, something sharper, something steadier. For the first time in years, pain was no longer the only thing she felt. Now there was anger, and somewhere beneath it, the first flicker of power. She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror, eyes red but clear. "Never again," she whispered. She did not know it yet, but that moment would become the first step toward everything Daniel Brooks thought she would never have: a new life, a new strength. And one day, sooner than anyone expected, two children with his eyes and her courage. For a long time after her appointment with Dr. Elise Warren, Amelia Carter moved through life with a strange new awareness, as if someone had turned on a light in a room she had been forced to live in darkness. The pain was still there. So was the humiliation. So was the memory of every dinner table remark, every cold silence, every look from Daniel that had made her feel like she was the reason their marriage had collapsed. But now those memories had changed shape. Before they had felt like evidence, now they felt like theft. Something had been stolen from her. Not just her marriage, but her peace, her confidence, and years of her life spent carrying a blame that had never been proven. The realization sat in her chest like a live wire. Some days it made her cry, other days it made her furious. Most days it did both. Still, Amelia had no interest in falling apart again. She had already survived the worst version of herself once. She had no desire to revisit it, so she did what she had always done when life gave her no safe place to rest. She worked. The private medical foundation where she served as donor relations director occupied 3 floors of a glass building in Midtown Atlanta. The offices were sleek, orderly, and relentlessly busy. Most days were filled with fundraising calls, board presentations, community outreach planning, and carefully staged dinners meant to convince wealthy people that generosity was both noble and urgent. Amelia was good at it, better than good. She understood people. She knew how to read hesitation in a room, how to soften resistance, how to make someone feel seen. Pain had sharpened those instincts. It had made her observant in ways privilege never could. Within a year, she had become one of the foundation's most trusted leaders. By the third year, people stopped introducing her as promising and started describing her as essential. She kept her apartment simple, her circle small, and her personal life mostly non-existent. That was intentional. Love, at least the version she had known, no longer felt romantic to her. It felt conditional, fragile, a beautiful promise with fine print hidden at the bottom. She went to work, went home, read in bed, and told herself she was content. Sometimes she almost believed it. Then came Rebecca Sloan. Rebecca joined the foundation as a senior program strategist in early spring. Breezing into the office on her first day in a cream-colored suit and bright red lipstick, with the confidence of someone who had never once apologized for taking up space. She was brilliant, loud, funny, and incapable of pretending to like anyone she did not actually like. For reasons Amelia could not fully explain, Rebecca liked her immediately. "You look like someone who carries the entire organization on her back and pretends it's yoga," Rebecca said during their second meeting. Amelia blinked. "I'm sorry," Rebecca grinned. "That was my way of saying you seem competent and emotionally repressed." Against her will, Amelia laughed. That was the beginning. Over the next several months, Rebecca forced her way into Amelia's life with the gentle persistence of a very stylish storm. She brought her coffee without asking how she liked it and somehow always got it right. She sent sarcastic text messages during board meetings. She invited Amelia to dinners, art shows, rooftop events, and once, inexplicably, a candle-making workshop that ended with wax all over both of them and Amelia laughing harder than she had in years. "You need hobbies," Rebecca informed her afterward. "I have hobbies." "No, you have coping mechanisms with a calendar." It became impossible not to care about her. Rebecca did not ask invasive questions, but she noticed things. The way Amelia changed the subject when conversations drifted toward marriage. The way her smile thinned when children were mentioned. The way she sometimes went quiet for no visible reason and stayed that way for the rest of the afternoon. One night, over dinner at a dimly lit restaurant tucked behind Peachtree Street, Rebecca finally asked, "Who hurt you?" Amelia looked up from her glass of water. Rebecca's tone was light, but her gaze was not. "I'm serious." Amelia let out a small breath. "That's a big question for a Tuesday. It's Wednesday. See. I'm already overwhelmed." Rebecca smiled, but she did not let it go. "You don't have to tell me everything. I just want to know what made you build walls this high." For a moment, Amelia considered deflecting, making a joke, ordering dessert to buy time. Instead, she surprised herself. "I was married," she said. Rebecca's expression softened just slightly. "Okay, he left." Rebecca leaned back in her chair but kept her eyes on Amelia. "Because," Amelia stared at the candle between them, "because we couldn't have children, at least that's what everyone believed." Rebecca did not interrupt. "My former husband's family blamed me," Amelia continued, her voice calm but distant, as though she were describing someone else's life. "Then he started blaming me too. Eventually he left, and I spent years thinking maybe I had ruined everything." She paused. Later, I found out the diagnosis was never confirmed. He refused to do the testing he needed, and somehow I still became the problem. Rebecca sat in silence for several seconds. Then she said very softly, "That man is garbage." Amelia laughed before she could stop herself. Rebecca pointed at her. "I'm so serious. Designer garbage, maybe, expensively packaged." "Still garbage." The laugh turned into something more fragile. Amelia lowered her eyes. "It sounds ridiculous now," she said. "But for a long time, I really believed them." "Of course you did," Rebecca said. "If enough people tell you the fire is your fault, eventually you stop asking who was holding the match." That stayed with Amelia, maybe because it was true. Maybe because no one had ever framed it that way before. From then on, things shifted again. Not dramatically, not overnight, but enough. Amelia started saying yes more often. Yes to weekend brunch. Yes to taking a short trip to Savannah with Rebecca and two women from the office. Yes to buying flowers for her own apartment just because they made the place feel less temporary. Yes to therapy, after Rebecca recommended a woman who, in her words, was excellent at helping high-functioning women stop emotionally babysitting terrible men. Therapy was harder than Amelia expected. Healing, she learned, was not graceful. It was repetitive and irritating and often humiliating. It involved saying things out loud that sounded dramatic until she realized they were simply true. I tied my worth to being chosen. I confused endurance with love. I kept trying to earn tenderness from people who benefited from withholding it. Some sessions left her lighter. Others left her furious. Both, her therapist assured her, meant progress. Summer came to Atlanta in a blaze of heat and green, and with it came the first invitation Amelia almost declined. It was a fundraising gala hosted by a major pediatric research partner, one of those polished black tie events full of old donors, emerging executives, and people who spoke in polished sentences about impact while silently evaluating one another's shoes. Amelia had attended dozens like it. This one should have been routine. It was. She realized that the moment she stepped into the ballroom and saw Daniel Brooks standing across the room. For one sharp second, the entire space seemed to narrow. He was near the bar, dressed in a dark tuxedo, one hand resting around a glass of bourbon, the other tucked into his pocket. He looked almost exactly as she remembered him, tall, composed, expensive, but the details were different now. There were faint lines around his mouth, a stiffness in his posture, a polished strain that had not been there before, and beside him stood a woman Amelia did not recognize. She was younger, maybe by 6 or 7 years, with honey blonde hair, delicate features, and the kind of beauty that made people assume softness where there might be none. Her hand rested lightly on Daniel's arm as she smiled at someone speaking to them. Amelia felt the old pain rise on instinct, then just as quickly something else replaced it: distance. Not indifference, not yet, but distance. Rebecca, standing beside Amelia, followed her gaze. "Is that him?" Amelia nodded once. Rebecca looked Daniel over with open skepticism. "That's the great tragic love story." Amelia let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "Please don't start." "I'm not starting, I'm observing. He looks like he complains to waiters." "Rebecca, he does." Amelia should have smiled more. Instead, her body had gone tense in ways she could not fully control. Her palms felt cold. Her heartbeat was suddenly too loud. Daniel had not seen her yet. She could leave, she thought. She could make some excuse, turn around, go home, and protect the calm she had spent years rebuilding. But then he looked up and saw her. The change in his face was immediate: shock first, then disbelief, then something far more difficult to name. Amelia stood perfectly still as Daniel said something to the woman beside him and started walking toward her. Rebecca leaned closer. "Do you want me to accidentally spill a drink on him?" Amelia inhaled slowly. "Not yet." Daniel stopped in front of her, and for a second neither of them spoke. Up close, the years were even more visible. He still had the same gray-blue eyes, the same measured expression, the same careful control, but the ease that once defined him was gone. "Amelia," he said at last. His voice did something strange to her, not emotionally, physically. It unlocked an old memory in her muscles, a reflex that no longer belonged in her life. "Daniel," he looked at her as though trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the one he had left behind. And to be fair, she had changed. Her hair was shorter now, cut just above the shoulders in a sleek style that framed her face more sharply. Her posture was different too, straighter, more certain. She no longer carried herself like someone waiting to be approved of. "You look," Daniel began, then stopped. "Alive," Rebecca offered. Daniel's eyes flicked to her. Amelia almost smiled. "Rebecca Sloan, she works with me." Rebecca extended a hand with polished sweetness. "And you're the ex-husband? I've heard absolutely enough." Daniel hesitated, then shook her hand. Before the moment could grow even more uncomfortable, the blonde woman approached them. Daniel, she said, then looked at Amelia with polite curiosity. Daniel cleared his throat. This is Vanessa. My wife, the word landed without cutting. That surprised Amelia more than anything. Vanessa smiled and extended her hand. It's nice to meet you. Amelia shook it. You too? Vanessa's smile remained pleasant, but there was a flicker of assessment in her eyes. She knew exactly who Amelia was. Of course she did. People rarely enter marriages blind to the ghosts already living there. We've heard so much about the foundation, Vanessa said. Daniel mentioned you've done very well here. Amelia looked at him. Very well here, such a neat way to summarize everything he had once assumed she would not survive. That's kind of him, she said. Daniel shifted slightly. Would you mind if we talk sometime? Rebecca let out a soft, offended sound. Absolutely not. Amelia ignored her. About what? Daniel's expression was unreadable. Just to catch up, as if they were former classmates, as if he had not once stood in a house they built together and told her he needed a life that could move forward. Amelia held his gaze, then she said, I don't think that would be appropriate. Vanessa's face remained composed, though Amelia noticed the smallest tightening in her jaw. Daniel nodded once. Right. Of course. A donor approached then, cheerful and oblivious, and the moment broke apart under the pressure of social politeness. Amelia spent the rest of the evening in a state she could only describe as split. One part of her functioned beautifully, smiling, greeting sponsors, delivering elegant remarks about pediatric access programs. The other part remained aware every second that Daniel was somewhere in the room, watching her. When the event finally ended, Rebecca insisted on driving her home. I hate him, Rebecca announced as they merged onto the highway. You barely spoke to him. I hated him on principle before he even opened his mouth. Amelia stared out the window at the city lights sliding by. He's married. Congratulations to Vanessa. Amelia laughed faintly. Rebecca glanced at her. How are you really? Amelia thought about it. 3 years ago, seeing Daniel with another woman would have shattered her. 2 years ago, it would have sent her into a spiral. Even a year ago, it might have undone weeks of progress. Now she felt unsettled, angry maybe, exposed in some old private place, but broken. No, that part was over. I'm okay, she said, and for once it was mostly true. Rebecca nodded. Good. Because you looked incredible, and he looked like a man realizing his decisions have sequel consequences. That line made Amelia laugh all the way to her apartment. But later, after she changed into pajamas and washed off her makeup and stood alone in the quiet of her bedroom, the encounter returned to her in fragments. His face when he first saw her. The careful way he'd asked to talk, the tension beneath Vanessa's smile. Amelia sat on the edge of the bed and tried to understand why it bothered her, not because he had remarried. That hurt had already lived and died. What bothered her was the unfinished feeling of it. The way he had walked back into her orbit, carrying the same air of withheld truth he had always worn when he did not want to say what he really meant. The next week, she got her answer. It arrived in the form of an email. From Daniel, the subject line was painfully simple. Can we talk? Amelia stared at it from her office desk for a full minute before opening it. The message was short. Amelia, I know I have no right to ask this, but I would appreciate the chance to speak with you privately. There are things I should have said a long time ago. If you're willing, coffee or lunch wherever you choose. If not, I understand. Daniel, she read it twice, then a third time. There are things I should have said a long time ago. How convenient, she thought. That time had finally made him articulate. She nearly deleted it. Instead, she forwarded it to Rebecca with a one-line message. Tell me why I should not reply. Rebecca responded in under 30 seconds. Because prison orange is not your color. Amelia smiled despite herself, then another message came. But also, if you do meet him, pick a public place, wear something devastating, and let him suffer respectfully. Amelia did not answer that day, or the next, but the email stayed in her mind. Not because she wanted closure. She had learned the hard way that closure was often just another word people used when they wanted access to you after losing the right. No, what unsettled her was curiosity. What could Daniel possibly have to say now? 2 days later, she found out part of it without even trying. She was leaving a lunch meeting when she ran into Vanessa in the lobby of a downtown office tower connected to the foundation's legal partners. Vanessa was alone this time, dressed in a pale blue sheath dress, her hair pinned back, one hand gripping her phone with more force than elegance required. She stopped when she saw Amelia. For a brief second, both women looked equally surprised. Then Vanessa smiled, though it seemed thinner than before. Amelia. Hi, Vanessa. There was an awkward pause filled by the soft movement of people passing around them. Then Vanessa said, I hope this doesn't sound strange, but do you have a minute? Every instinct Amelia possessed told her this was not going to be casual. Still, she nodded. They moved to a quieter sitting area near the windows. a sleek lounge space with cream chairs and a low glass table between them. Vanessa remained standing for a moment before sitting down, smoothing her dress with a distracted gesture. She looked tired, not physically exactly. More like someone who had been carrying disappointment for long enough that it had begun to show around the edges. I wasn't sure whether to say anything, Vanessa began. But after seeing you at the gala, I thought maybe I should. Amelia waited. Vanessa looked down at her hands. Daniel emailed you, didn't he? Amelia's face remained neutral. Why do you ask? Vanessa gave a short, humorless smile. Because he's been restless ever since that night. Which usually means he's trying to rewrite history in his head. The bluntness of that caught Amelia off guard. Vanessa noticed. Sorry, that was unfair, she exhaled. Actually, no. It was. A quiet settled between them. Then Vanessa lifted her eyes and said the one sentence Amelia had never expected to hear from Daniel Brooks's wife. He did the same thing to me. Amelia said nothing. Vanessa's gaze held steady now, whatever performance she had worn at the gala clearly gone. Not exactly the same. But close enough. There was no triumph in her voice, no rivalry, just exhaustion. Amelia felt something shift. You should explain that, she said. Vanessa nodded. I think Daniel wanted me because I fit the life he thought he deserved. Younger wife, easier story, fewer complications. He said he was ready to start over, to have the future he had always wanted. She gave a bitter laugh. Turns out Daniel likes the fantasy of family more than the reality of honesty. Amelia's pulse slowed into something colder, sharper. Vanessa continued. We've been trying to have a baby for almost 2 years. Amelia stared at her, and, she asked quietly. Vanessa's smile disappeared completely. And after a year of failed attempts, I insisted we both get tested. She paused. This time he couldn't avoid it. Amelia already knew what was coming before Vanessa said it. The issue wasn't me. There it was, plain, final, real, even though Dr. Warren had already prepared Amelia for the possibility. Hearing it confirmed by another woman connected to Daniel hit with a force she could not have anticipated. Vanessa looked at her carefully. You didn't know for certain, did you? Amelia let out a slow breath. No, but I suspected. Vanessa nodded. I found out 6 months ago. Does he know that you know what happened before? Yes. That answer carried weight. Amelia leaned back slightly. And yet you're still married to him. Vanessa flinched, but only just, for the moment. The honesty in that silenced whatever sharp reply Amelia might have made. Vanessa looked out the window for a second, then back at her. I'm not here to defend him. I'm not even sure why I'm here exactly. Maybe because once I realized the truth, I couldn't stop thinking about you. Amelia's throat tightened. Vanessa continued more quietly. He let you carry that blame. He let his family turn you into the explanation for something he was too proud to face, and then he built another marriage on top of the same lie. The words landed with brutal precision. Amelia felt anger move through her again, but now it was cleaner, less tangled with self-doubt, more like clarity. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Vanessa looked at her for a long moment. Because he wants to talk to you now, she said. And I need you to understand that whatever apology he's preparing, it is probably for him, not for you. That was such an exact description of Daniel that Amelia almost smiled. Almost. Vanessa stood then, adjusting the strap of her bag over her shoulder. You deserved better than what he did. I just thought someone should finally say it. Amelia looked up at her. For the first time, she saw not a rival, not the woman who had taken her place, but another person caught in the wake of the same man's cowardice. Thank you, Amelia said. Vanessa gave a small nod. I hope your life is good now. It was a simple thing to say, almost ordinary. But after years of being treated as someone left behind, something about the question beneath those words hit Amelia deeply. She answered with the truth. It is, Vanessa smiled then, genuinely this time. Good. And then she walked away. Amelia remained in the lounge for several minutes after that, staring at nothing. The issue wasn't me. The sentence echoed through her with a strange mix of vindication and grief. Vindication because the lie had finally cracked open completely. Grief because no truth, however satisfying, could give her back the woman she had been before Daniel, and his family taught her to doubt herself. That evening, after hours of silence and thought, Amelia finally replied to Daniel's email, just one sentence. Tomorrow, 4 p.m. Westbridge Cafe, 30 minutes. His response came 10 minutes later. Thank you, I'll be there. The next afternoon, Amelia arrived 5 minutes early. Westbridge Cafe was quiet, upscale, and intentionally neutral, the kind of place where uncomfortable conversations could hide behind good coffee and tasteful lighting. She chose a table near the windows and sat with her bag beside her, back straight, expression composed. At exactly 4 o'clock, Daniel walked in. Of course he did. He saw her immediately and crossed the room with that same measured stride she used to know by sound alone. When he sat down, he looked at her for a moment like he still wasn't sure she was real. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You have 30 minutes." Daniel nodded once. "Fair enough." A server came by. Amelia declined anything. Daniel ordered black coffee and did not touch it when it arrived. For several seconds he said nothing, then he exhaled and looked directly at her. "I was wrong." Amelia did not react. Daniel seemed to expect something from that confession. Maybe surprise, maybe softness, maybe relief. He got none of them. "I know," she said. That unsettled him. He frowned slightly. "You know," Amelia held his gaze. "Vanessa and I spoke yesterday." Daniel's expression changed instantly, so that explained part of his urgency. He looked away for a moment, jaw tight, then back at her. "Then I suppose there's no careful way to say this." There never was. He accepted that. For the first time since sitting down, Daniel seemed to lose some of his polish. His shoulders lowered. His face showed the strain beneath the control. "When Vanessa and I started having trouble conceiving, she pushed for full testing," he said. "The results came back 6 months ago." He paused. "The fertility issue is mine." Amelia said nothing. Daniel swallowed. "I didn't want to believe it." "No," she said, "you didn't." His eyes flickered at the edge in her voice. "I handled everything badly," he said. "You destroyed a marriage." "Yes." "You let your mother humiliate me." His face tightened. "Yes." "You let me think my body was the reason my life fell apart." The silence between them deepened. Finally, Daniel said yes. There was no satisfaction in hearing him admit it, none at all, just a hollow kind of confirmation. Amelia folded her hands in her lap to keep them still. "Why did you really ask me here?" Daniel looked at her, and for the first time in years she saw something close to shame. "Because you deserved the truth from me." She almost laughed. "Now?" she asked. "You think now is when I deserve the truth?" "No," he said quietly. "I think I should have given it to you years ago. That at least was accurate." He leaned forward slightly, his voice lower now. "I was angry, Amelia, at myself, at the situation, at everything I couldn't control. And instead of facing what I was afraid of, I let you carry it." He looked down. "There's no excuse for that." Amelia stared at him. The words were what she had once ached to hear. "They changed nothing." "Do you know what the worst part was?" she asked. Daniel lifted his eyes. "It wasn't the divorce," she said. "It wasn't even your mother. It was the way you looked at me near the end, like I had failed some test I never agreed to take." Her voice remained calm, which somehow made it hit harder. "You made me feel disposable." Daniel closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, they were bright with something he clearly hated showing. "I know." "No," Amelia said, "you know now." "That's different." He had no answer for that. Outside, traffic moved steadily past the cafe windows. Inside, cups clinked softly, low music played, someone laughed near the register. The whole world continued in ordinary motion while years of buried damage sat between them on a small wooden table. Daniel finally spoke again. "I'm not asking you to forgive me." "Good, I needed you to know I see it now." Amelia looked at him for a long moment, then she said the truest thing she had ever said to him. "I don't need you to see it now, I needed you to see it then." That ended it, not because he stood up, not because she raised her voice, but because both of them understood in that moment that there was no road backward, no revised version of the past, no apology that could turn cruelty into misunderstanding. Daniel sat there absorbing the finality of it. Amelia rose smoothly, picked up her bag, and looked down at him one last time. "I hope you tell the truth more quickly in your next life," she said. Then she left, and for the first time since Daniel Brooks had entered her life, Amelia did not look back. At home that night, she stood in her kitchen with bare feet against cool tile and let the silence settle around her. It felt different now, not empty, cleared. Some endings take years to finish. Some truths arrive late, wearing regret, asking to be treated like redemption. But regret is not redemption, and truth, when delayed too long, becomes just another form of selfishness. Amelia understood that now. She poured herself a glass of water and stood by the window, looking out at the Atlanta skyline flickering in the distance. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass, older, steadier, harder in the right places. Her phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Rebecca. "Did you survive, or do I need to bring wine and criminal alibis?" Amelia smiled and typed back, "I survived, bring wine anyway." Rebecca replied immediately, "On my way. Also, I hope he cried." Amelia set the phone down and laughed quietly. Then, without warning, her hand moved to her stomach. It was an unconscious gesture, brief, almost nothing, but it made her pause. Because for the last several weeks she had been feeling off, more tired than usual, a little nauseated in the mornings. Her period, now that she thought about it, was late. Amelia frowned. That made no sense. She was not seeing anyone seriously. There had been exactly one impulsive, unexpected, not at all planned weekend with someone she had met at a medical leadership retreat 6 weeks earlier, a kind, intelligent physician named Dr. Nathan Cole, who lived in Chicago and had made it very clear that he found her both intimidating and fascinating. It had not been a relationship. It had barely even been a beginning. Just one rain-soaked evening, one long conversation, one night she had allowed herself to feel wanted without conditions and without promises. Afterward, they had exchanged a few friendly messages, but life and geography had kept it suspended in that strange space between possibility and memory. Still, Amelia stood very still. Then she looked at the calendar on her fridge, counted once, then again her pulse quickened. By the time Rebecca arrived with 2 bottles of wine and a dramatic amount of concern, Amelia was sitting on the couch holding a pharmacy bag in both hands. Rebecca stopped in the doorway. "Why do you look like the plot just thickened?" Amelia slowly lifted the bag. Rebecca blinked, then blinked again. "Oh," she said. Amelia nodded once. Rebecca set the wine on the table with extreme care. "That kind of plot." Neither of them laughed this time. 20 minutes later, Amelia stood alone in the bathroom, staring at 2 small white tests lined up on the counter. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it. "This is ridiculous," she told herself. "This is impossible. This is." Then the second line appeared on both tests, clear, unmistakable. Amelia stared at them, one hand slowly rising to cover her mouth. Outside the door, Rebecca called, "Do I come in, or is this a private nervous breakdown?" Amelia could not answer, not right away, because the world had just shifted again. And this time it had done so with 2 pink lines. Amelia opened the bathroom door with trembling hands. Rebecca looked at her face once, then at the tests in her hand, and instantly understood. "You're pregnant," Rebecca whispered. Amelia nodded, tears filling her eyes. "Yes." For a moment neither of them spoke. Then Rebecca pulled her into a hug so tight it broke the shock, and Amelia finally cried, not from grief this time, but from the overwhelming weight of hope. Months later, that hope doubled. At her next major scan, the doctor smiled and turned the monitor toward her. "You're having twins." Amelia laughed through tears, one hand over her mouth, the other over her heart. After everything she had survived, after all the years of blame and heartbreak, life had given her not one miracle but two. She told Nathan soon after. At first he was stunned, then deeply emotional. He flew in the very next week, sat across from her in quiet disbelief, and then said the words Amelia never expected to hear from a man again. "I'm not here out of obligation. I'm here because I want this with you." And for once she believed it. Nathan stayed, not in some dramatic, reckless way, but with calm consistency. He showed up to appointments. He learned every detail. He painted the nursery, assembled cribs badly but enthusiastically, and made Amelia laugh when fear tried to creep back in. He never treated her pregnancy like proof of her worth. He treated it like the beginning of a family built on honesty. Then, nearly a year later, Amelia saw Daniel again. It happened at a charity event in Atlanta. She arrived in a deep navy dress, carrying one twin on her hip while the other rested in a stroller beside Nathan. Her son had Daniel's eyes. Her daughter had Amelia's quiet, observant stare. Together, they were impossible to ignore. When Daniel turned and saw her, he froze. His gaze moved from Amelia to the twins, then to Nathan standing protectively beside her. For the first time, Daniel Brooks looked like a man stripped of every excuse he had ever hidden behind. He stepped forward slowly. "They're yours." Amelia met his gaze calmly. "Yes, they are." Daniel's face tightened with a grief that came too late to matter. He looked at the children again, then back at her, understanding everything without needing it explained. The life he had once blamed her for denying him had never been impossible. He had destroyed it himself. Amelia did not need revenge. She did not need raised voices, dramatic speeches, or public humiliation. Life had already spoken more clearly than she ever could. Nathan gently touched her back. "Ready to go?" She smiled. "Yes." And just like that, she turned away, not bitter, not broken, not haunted, free. Because the best ending was never making Daniel suffer. It was living the life he said she could never have. A life filled with truth, love, and 2 beautiful children who would never grow up believing they had to earn affection by being perfect. As Amelia walked into her future with her family beside her, she realized something powerful. The woman Daniel left behind no longer existed. And the woman who returned with twins was stronger than anyone had ever imagined. The end.